I've had different moments in my life where I've really struggled. I tend not to talk about them, mostly because I don't need to keep it alive, right? It's an experience that I went through. I grew a lot from it. I learned a lot from it, and I move on. I understand what it is to be in a really, really dark place. And I understand what it is to feel like you're in this really dark place, even when to the outside world, your life looks pretty good. Welcome to the Manifesting Millions podcast, where we talk about manifestation, money, and practical guidance to creating your dream reality. My name is Amy Van Meel, and I am an experienced coach and transformation guide, obsessed with helping you get out of your own way and create a life that blows your mind each day you wake up. My goal in this podcast is to share practical manifestation, self-awareness, and growth techniques in real talk conversations. So if you're ready to massively transform your reality, your finances, your relationships, and your overall enjoyment of life, you are in the right place. I am absolutely delighted that you're here with me today, babe. Let's get into it. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here with me today. I want to just very quickly front this episode by saying that if what I'm about to talk about today is something that you are currently struggling with, I will do my very best to make sure that I'm giving you some really great insight and information, and also just remind you that you're not alone, that this too shall pass, that things, I promise, will get better. And yeah, it's going to be okay. So I was inspired to record this episode after a conversation with a loved one who is struggling. I don't talk a lot about the depth of the struggle that I've gone through in my past. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you'll probably be very familiar with my 2012 year where everything went sideways. And it's a very great example of like when everything just goes completely like to crap and you're trying to figure out what's going on. But as hard as 2012 was for me in terms of like what was happening in my life, it wasn't the time that I actually felt most in the dark and most depressed. I've had different moments in my life where I've really struggled. I tend not to talk about them, mostly because I don't need to keep it alive, right? It's an experience that I went through. I grew a lot from it. I learned a lot from it, and I move on. I understand what it is to be in a really, really dark place. And I understand what it is to feel like you're in this really dark place, even when to the outside world, your life looks pretty good. It's almost easier, I suppose, for like the world to believe there's something wrong or that you're struggling if like major things are happening, like someone that you love passes away, or you have like, I don't know, major health crisis or whatever, but when things look okay from the outside world, it kind of looks like your life is just carrying on as usual. It's challenging for others to see that you're struggling. And I will say that it's not important for other people to know that you're struggling. Okay. So we're going to talk today about the 3 steps that I would recommend you take if you're struggling in depression. And I want to be very mindful about how I'm using depression. I'm going to use that as a catch-all phrase today for like that dark, low, very lonely place that we find ourselves in sometimes in life. I want to be very clear. I am not going to talk about any medications. I have no opinions about them either way. But I do want to just understand that like I think many of us go through periods in life where we feel depressed, even if we may not have clinical depression. So I want to be just clear about that if you are struggling with actual clinical depression and it's been diagnosed, of course, please work with your healthcare team to get the care and support that you need. Today is much more of a here's if I ever went through this again, this is what I would tell myself and remind myself and ask myself to do. So that's the context I want to frame up today as. Let's dive right in. I understand that today feels probably a little bit heavier than some of the previous episodes. And that's mostly because I really want to make sure that I am giving this particular episode the gravity and attention that it deserves. And so if you notice that I seem a little bit different than normal, that's just why. And then the last thing I'm going to say is it's so funny actually that I'm recording this episode today, only because I feel like over the last few weeks, I've had a number of conversations with a variety of different people about how I think others sometimes perceive me as not being able to talk about like the heavy stuff, which is always fascinating to me. And I don't know if that's correct or not, but my default always is I crack jokes, I bring humor into everything. I learned years ago, and I learned this from a boss, and it's something that I apply in work, but I actually apply it to life in general, that yes, life is, we can see it as serious, but like it's not great to take life so seriously, right? I mean, there's this sign I saw one time. I think actually my husband might have bought it for like their family cabin. I don't remember where I've seen it, but it says something like, don't take life too seriously. You're not getting out alive anyway, which is, I mean, right? Like it's true. We're not getting out of this adventure alive. And it is an adventure. And then the very last thing I just wanted, because it just popped into my brain. My husband kind of went down this like rabbit hole of Ricky Gervais yesterday. And so we had a whole bunch of Ricky Gervais playing while we were hanging out last night. And I love this thing that he said where he talked about like, there's however many billion years that have been in existence before we ever arrived. Then we're born. We're on this planet in our human form for like 70, 80, 90 years, whatever that looks like. And then we cease to exist again. And it goes back into like this, void of time. And I love that kind of framing up of like, this is such a unique time that we are here. It's such a treasure and a gift. And I know, oh my God, do I know that when life is going to absolute fucking shit, it does not feel like a gift. I get that. I understand that so, so deeply. And how do I want to say this? I understand how we can get into some really dark thought patterns and thought spirals. And this is where folks, I think, start to, when things really feel like they're just lost, we lose sight of the gift that life is. And this is where we might start finding ourselves into something more in a suicide realm of thinking and emotion. And 100%, if you are feeling that way, please, 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 please reach out and get help. There's lots of, I'm not going to try to like list all the options, but like seriously, just Google suicide help. And I'm just going to add in here because I want to make this so clear. I was really struggling about a year and a half ago, and I was trying to get help. And I was reaching out to healthcare providers. I was doing all the things that I was supposed to. I was using the resource, like the emotional resource options through my work. And oh my goodness, I'm a person who knows how to ask for help. I'm a person who is really well resourced. I'm someone that has a tremendous support network of friends and loved ones around me. And I was having so much trouble trying to find someone that would actually help me that I actually remember saying to a friend of mine, like, I want to be very clear, I'm not suicidal, but I can understand because after all of this, knowing all that I do, like, fuck, I can understand why someone might go, there's no point, and I'm just going to call it. Okay. So I want to just color that in to say, if you are in that space in life and it feels like, fuck, like nobody's paying attention to you, please keep going. Please keep asking for help. Please keep reaching out. Lean on your support network, because this life that you have is so precious and it is so wonderful. And I guarantee you that it's going to get better. Okay. So I have just 3 simple steps because I wanted to make this really approachable. If you're already struggling, right? If things are like, it just feels like an effort to even just get out of bed, the last thing you need is like, here's the 15 things that you need to do. No, that's not going to help you. So here's just 3 simple steps, okay? And I understand that like I've framed up this episode with some pretty heavy stuff at the beginning. I want to just add in that like it doesn't have to be just like a life that's really hard or you're in this really dark place. We will go through moments of this. I've heard of it talked as shamanic deaths or being in the void. I'm sure there's lots of different ways to think about it. And I know for myself, heck, even in the last 9 months, like I have gone through these sort of ebbs and flows and been in these dark spaces, and inevitably they pass, and sometimes they're only a day or 2, sometimes they're a little bit longer. So this is not just like if you're really like down and out desperate, this is just good for life in general. So the first of the 3 steps, if you're struggling, is to be mindful of your words. I am going to keep talking about this until the day that I shuffle off this mortal coil because our words literally create everything in our reality. And I want to just be clear, this is the words that we speak, and it's also the words that we think, right? The words that we use, whether it's in our mind or when we actually vocalize it through our mouths, they're really, really potent. Every single word is like an intention droplet that you're sending out into the universe or that you're adding into, call it your like universal bucket of like, here's the things that I'm creating. Now, I've talked about this as it relates to finances and money, of course. And naturally, like it's important to think about that as well. But I want to just broaden our scope here. So be mindful of how you're describing things. So for example, if you really are struggling, knowing that like anything that follows I am is extremely potent. If you say I am struggling, you are in effect creating more of that reality. And I know that it can feel very exhausting when you're already like really struggling and depressed and down to then like be super conscious of your words. But here's a couple of like reframes that you can use that still communicate the essence, right? So as someone that like is very focused on making sure that I'm honest and I keep my integrity in how I speak and how I show up, I've really had to practice, how do I say what I am feeling or experiencing in a way that describes it so that I can get the help or support that I need, but in a way that doesn't necessarily create more of this. So I very rarely will put anything after I am that is in the negative. And if that does happen, I'm usually like in full sob tears. I'm really like in the depth of it. So that almost never happens, okay? What we can say is how we feel. I feel really depressed. I feel really lonely. I am experiencing this really, this state of friction, a state of resistance. Things like that, that they describe what's happening without associating who you are as an identity to that. What I want to add into, like thinking about our words. So think about I think often, not always, but often states of depression and struggle will stem out of one area of life and then they begin to snowball into others. if that's the case, like think about how are you or how have you been describing this area of life? Okay. So let's say, for example, um, you you had a relationship, a love relationship that's falling apart or has fallen apart for whatever reason, right? Someone dumped somebody, someone passed away, something, I don't know, whatever the reason is. If you, ahead of that happening, were saying things like, I don't feel loved, I am not lovable, I am really sad, I am really lonely, I am, what are other things that you might say? Like, I'm not worthy of having this person in my life. I'm not smart enough for them, whatever. If you notice one of the key, all of those sentences start with I am, which is a declarative intention, and then followed by a state of being. So you 100% can feel lonely. Loneliness is an emotion. It's something that we feel. It's not who you are. Okay? You are this like amazing, magnetic, stardust created human who is, filled with this beautiful soul. We wouldn't say like, oh my God, that amazing cosmic being is also this like pile of sadness, right? So think about like, how are you using your words? And how are you using your words in all situations? So when you're describing how you're feeling to a friend, when you're describing how you're feeling to a coach or a therapist, when you're describing how you're feeling to yourself, like really be mindful of how you're using I am. You want to only declare in what you are calling in. If you are in a state where it just feels like absolute fucking bogus, you cannot say I am happy, that is 100% fine. I want you to be honest and truthful, right? We want you to stay in your integrity, but also try on some progress statements for size. So instead of saying, I am happy, maybe you say something like, I'm on the path to feeling happy. I am open to expanding my happiness. I am willing to let go of this dark feeling in order to allow in more happiness, more joy, more love, more whatever. Those progress statements will help you stay in integrity because, like, if you're crying your eyes out and you've been really, really like struggling through stuff, to say like, oh, I'm happy is complete bullshit. Every part of your body is going to call bullshit on that. But you do have the intention that you want to shift this and that you want to feel joy and happiness and love and all those joyful things, right? So our words are very, very, very powerful in this way. And then the last thing I'm going to say about them being mindful of our words is just a reminder that like our words have created the reality that we live in today. I know that sucks to hear. I know that nobody wants to hear that when they're going through the shit, right? You don't want to hear, hey, by the way, you created this. I say this with love. I'm not like, you ding dong, you're an idiot. Here's all the things. No, our words created our reality. So the really good news about that is because you've created what exists now, it also means that you already have the amazing power within you in order to create something different. And does that mean it's going to happen overnight? Probably not. But every day, every moment, you can change that. You can move towards the reality that you want, and your words, the thoughts you think, the words you say, the things you type, all those things, those are all you creating your reality, okay? So, number 2 is reach out and get help. I cannot say this enough. When we are really struggling, when things are really hard, when we're in a really dark place, it is very, very, very difficult to go it alone. And so many of us, and I think especially the older generations, so many of us are taught not to like be whiny or not to be complaining or, and we see lots of stories. Oh my gosh, so many stories that we celebrate people who just like did it all on their own. Spoiler alert, fucking nobody did it on their own. Everybody has had help. And I'm going to just add in here for anybody who goes, no, I did it all by myself. The collective was still there supporting you. Okay. Your cosmic crew was there supporting you. Your highest self was there supporting you. That's all part of source. All of humanity is part of source. So this all comes together. So I just want to be like very clear that none of us are doing this on our own. Okay. We're all kind of in this together. So yeah, let's just be ready with that. However, what I want to clarify in is when you're really struggling, when things are really fucking hard, work with a coach or a therapist. Find somebody, and I'm going to be super honest, you might have to try 2 or 3 different people until you find the right fit. And I know that feels like a shit ton of work when you're already really struggling and things feel really fucking hard. I promise you it's worth it. So I'm going to color this in with a story. So it's some number of years ago now. I don't know exactly how many years ago. It's after 2012 because I was already living in Calgary. I was with my husband, who's now was my boyfriend at the time, and I had my design business. Life was pretty good. I had good friends. I had clients. I had, financially things could have been better, sure, but on the whole, my life was pretty good. But oh my God, I was fucking depressed. And I didn't realize how down in the dark I was until this very pivotal, clear moment, and I can see it clear as fucking day in my mind. I was sitting at a kitchen island. My then boyfriend had gone out for a guy's night. He came home. I'm sitting at the island, completely just like lower than dirt. And he walks in the door and he's telling me about this like Alberta politician who had died in a plane crash earlier that day. And literally my very first thought was, he's so lucky. And to say that went off like an absolute atomic bomb in my brain is not an understatement. It just ricocheted inside my skull and I realized, I'm like, oh my God, I'm fucking jealous of a dead person. Okay, this cannot keep going. This is not okay. This needs to change. In that moment, because this is how our highest self works, especially when we're not great or we haven't, really learned how to like tune in on a more regular basis. But in that moment, literally, my highest self just whispered to me, message Karen. Now, Karen was a person that was in my circle at the time. It doesn't really matter. And so I reached out. I just said, hey, I just got this nudge to message you. I'm really struggling. I don't know what to do. And I'll be very clear, I had no money to pay for a therapist or a coach. When I went and met with this person and they told me their fees, I wanted to throw up. I'm like, oh my God, I have no fucking idea how I'm going to afford this. But I knew that I had to. I knew that if I kept going and I kept trying to do it alone, I was probably only going to get worse. And I did not want to know what came after being jealous of a dead person. Okay? Like I was 0% interested in that. So reaching out and getting help is so important. I've worked with lots of different coaches. I've worked with therapists of all varieties. Now, I suppose in like some weird way, I got really lucky where when I was young, my parents went through quite a nasty divorce. And part of somebody somewhere, I have no idea who it is, but God bless the person who did. Somebody somewhere basically said, get Amy connected in with a therapist. Now there were 4 of us, like siblings. There's me and 3 siblings. I don't know if the rest went. It doesn't really matter. But for me, that was my first taste of therapy. And it was a very interesting experience for me. I had a really great therapist. I was 13, I think, at the time. I don't think I said a single fucking thing the first, I don't even know, like 3, 4, 5 sessions. I have no idea. Outside of I'm fine. And then I would just sit there sullenly because I just felt like, I mean, I was forced to be in this therapy session, right? And nothing in my life. I'm not going to go like super deep into all this stuff, but like there was not a lot of people that I could trust, and I did not trust the therapist. But this person was really good and really kind and really patient. And over time, I learned to allow myself to open up with them. I found in this person a non-judgmental, helpful resource, someone who actually wanted the best for me, that wasn't forever like trying to tell me that I had to be grateful or I had to be whatever, all the garbage that I had been told all my life up to that point, and gave me actual tangible, is the first time in my life that someone gave me tangible tools and an actual strategy, what to do when there was this massive emotion, this massive unrest, this, I don't want to use the word attack, but like it was, I'm just going to say, suffice it to say that like my growing up years were not easy. Okay. So, but this therapist really helped me, like I said, gave me strategies, gave me tools, gave me unconditional support and an open ear. And that was huge. And that experience stayed with me. Now, of course, there might be people who are listening who are like, well, I had a really bad experience and that stayed with me. And I get it. I'm very grateful that the first experience I ever had with a therapist was so good. And it took time, right? Like I said, it wasn't just instant that I was like, this person's amazing. It took time, and over the years, I've worked with different coaches, different therapists in different streams. I've worked with psychologists, I've worked with psychiatrists, I've worked with rapid resolution therapy therapists, I've worked with life coaches of a whole bunch of different varieties, and I've always gained something out of them. And what I will say is that sometimes I've engaged a coach just for life reasons, going after a goal. I want some support, which is a great reason to work with a coach. That's the kind of coach that I am. I'm someone that comes in alongside you, helps you on the journey, guides you, supports you, is 100% there behind you. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not that person. Okay. So I've worked with coaches when I just wanted to go after a goal, but I've also worked with coaches when I've been, like I said, the very first person I reached out to as a coach was this person when I was in a really dark place. So all of this to say, I know this has been a bit of a long point, but I really feel that this point needs to be maybe hammered home a little bit more, is to reach out and get help. Don't try to do it alone. Please don't try to do it alone. And I'm going to add into this. You may have a really amazing support network, okay? You may have really amazing friends and really amazing family who are so supportive. They're really smart. They really want to be there for you. And you're like, it's fine. They've got me. I don't need to worry about reaching out and hiring somebody when I don't have the money. Please, please hear me when I say this. If you are in a brief dip, that support system is great. But if this dip starts to get really dark and it starts to get really heavy, or even things that you notice that like your friends just aren't responding to you like they used to, your family seems to kind of like want to stay away from you, those are good signs to say that that network is overly taxed. They're not in a place to support you through what you are going through. So there are reasons there are paid professionals, and they are, on the whole, I think very, very good at what they do. I really hope they are. If anybody's terrible at it, please stop fucking doing it, right? I don't think healers go into it just kind of thinking like, it doesn't really matter if I'm any good at it. Like generally they want the best for people. I know I want that for all of my clients. I have no problem telling people like, this is beyond my scope, can't help you with this, but here's some great resources. Trying to go it alone or trying to just lean on the network that you have already is very taxing for you and very taxing for your network. Okay. I have amazing, amazing, amazing people in my life. Some of the strongest, wisest, most loving, connected souls that I've ever known in my life. But I also know that I've gone through some really fucking deep shit, and I can't assume that they're going to just be able to shoulder all of that. And there's a different relationship when it comes to like a coach or a therapist. So step number 2 is reach out and get help. Okay. And then step number 3, this one is so, so important and challenging for us to do when we're already struggling. Allow yourself to receive support, and not just from others, but also from yourself. Now, I want to be clear. I said earlier in the episode, some of us will share with other people and some of us don't. You don't have to share what you're going through with somebody else, okay? You don't have to share with like friends or family or whatever. I don't think anybody in my family had a fucking clue that I was so deeply depressed a few years ago. I didn't have that relationship with my family. I still don't really have that relationship with my family. Like maybe a friend or two, but even they, I don't think understood or realized how dark I was feeling. So it's what I noticed was that because they didn't understand, and probably because I didn't tell them because I didn't want to share it, I also found myself denying their support. So really important for us to remember that it's okay and important and very, very valuable for us to allow ourselves to receive the support from someone else. And the other side of this, which is I would call it the if there were a bigger side of the coin, this is the bigger side of the coin, to receive support from yourself and to give yourself all the support that you need. Now, I want to color this in because it's going to, I know that like every time I learn about how someone else does it, I'm like, oh my God, okay, that is what that looks like. So that's my intent as I share this point. When I say about like giving yourself all the support you need, giant number 1, if I put like in all capital letters and like skywriter sized text, is rest. Oh my God. When I left my job almost a year ago, I anticipated that I'd need like a couple of days of rest and then I'd just fucking go for it, right? I was really excited to like get really like into my business and fully like just do the thing. It took me 2 months, and it was 2 of the most frustrating months I'd had in a while. I was so utterly exhausted. I would get up, I'd sleep 7-8 hours at night, which was normal, and then I'd get up and I'd be asleep on the couch by like 9:30, 10 o'clock, sometimes even 8 a.m. Like I'd get up at like 6:37 and at 8 I'd be asleep. I'd nap multiple times through the day and it drove me nuts. It's not something that I'm great at even now. It's something that I'm actively working on. I really only notice it now, either if my body is fighting something or first few days of my period, which is when my energy takes a massive drop. So it's still something that I'm working with, but I could not figure out. I was so fucking tired and it was driving me nuts because I couldn't get anything accomplished. And the less that I could do, the worse that I felt and the more that I beat myself up because I left this job and, all these things. The chatter in my brain was very busy. So rest is a big one. Rest is a huge way that we offer ourselves support. And I'm talking about true rest. I'm not talking about, okay, like I'll chill, but I'll answer a whole bunch of emails. Okay, well, I'll sit on the couch, but while I'm sitting here, I'm going to create all these programs. Okay, I'll stay home and I'll rest, but I'm going to wash the dishes and do the laundry and clean the bathroom. Like, that's not rest. I'm talking about legit actual rest where you sit your fucking ass down, you nap, you sleep, maybe you like chill out with some Netflix for a little while, okay? I want to be cautious that you're not going, well, Amy said to rest. And so now you've just spent like weeks and hours and hours and hours watching Netflix or Disney or whatever. Yes, sometimes it's important, but really that's still not like the depth of rest, right? You want to find the depth of rest, which is usually something aligned with a sleep or a deep meditation. So rest is huge, okay? Swapping out low vibe activities for activities that bring you joy. Oh my goodness. This is a lesson that I thought we globally got when we had COVID, and I feel like many of us have forgotten. Not the one about hand washing. Side note, how did we forget so quickly that like wash your hands every time you finish in the washroom? The amount of people that I see like leaving the washroom without having washed their hands. And I'm like, I don't care even if you didn't go pee, but you like touch the doors. Like just fucking wash your hands. Anywho, let me come back off of my little diatribe. So yes, washing your hands is the big one. So swapping out activities that bring you joy. So in COVID, when everything disappeared, right? All of it disappeared. It gave so many people a really big sort of reality check on how they were spending their time, an understanding of like, oh my God, okay, so actually, these committees that I was on, or these sports that I was doing, or these activities, they're fucking draining. I actually don't enjoy doing them at all, right? So we stopped doing them. One thing that is really important for us to remember when we are really struggling is that it's a zone of time that is rife for putting guilt and shame on top of ourselves. So we will berate ourselves into having to do something. So as much as possible, because I mean, look, you're already like struggling, your emotions are really low, your energy is likely low, your mental health, your emotional health, like all these things are really under duress. So swap out things in your schedule that are low vibe, that do not bring you joy, and swap in activities that do bring you joy. So for example, for myself, what that could look like, I noticed that like, and it's something that I've carried on now, like going forward. I almost never attend like events. I'm not a fan of networking events. They feel super, super exhausting and draining to me. I'm just going to use that as an example because it's kind of a good one to kind of color this in. What I've done instead is I will do things that I enjoy. So for example, let's say that maybe originally, I had planned to go to even just like a friend gathering with a bunch of people that I didn't know when I had no extra fucking energy and nothing in the fuel tank to get me through, because these, as an introvert, these are really hard places for me to be in. I just would say, I really appreciate the insight, not going to attend, not able to attend, not whatever, busy. You don't have to even give that much information. But I would instead do something that felt joyful. Maybe that was going for a run. Maybe that is talking my husband into going for a hike, or even just driving myself out to the mountains and going for a hike. Maybe that was, organizing a coffee date with a friend, or reading a book that just really lit me up, that I'm really enjoying. These things that bring you joy. When we are struggling, it's really easy to forget that there are things that exist in our life that are joyful, right? And because it's so much easier to guilt and berate and shame ourselves into having to do these things that we perceive as being important, but actually are just completely draining our tank. It's like, imagine that you have a really terrible cold and you know that like what would be super helpful is for you to just stay home, have chicken soup and fucking nap. But you're like, no, I promised that I would do this Ironman triathlon, so I am going to do it. Okay? And the hell with it. But you go do the thing, and what ends up is that you have way worse health. That was a weird way to say that, but like your health goes really downhill. We can draw this back to say, okay, you've got a cold. You made an agreement with yourself to go to the gym. So you force yourself to go to the gym. And then you find that like the cold lingers and it gets worse. And you're like, what's going on? Like, I don't get it. I went to the gym. I did this thing that's supposed to be healthy for you. Yeah, but your body actually needs rest because your body is already fighting on enough fronts. It's not like, cool, So all of these things in our whole immune system is hard at work. Let's also go lift some heavy things and create the tears and breaks in our muscles that are going to like work into being something bigger, right? Like, no, it sounds, to hear it like this probably sounds so simple and logical, but the amount of people who don't follow that always, like, it never ceases to shock me. Okay, so swapping out low vibe activities for activities that bring you joy, okay? And the last thing I'll say about that is that they don't have to be big, doesn't have to be giant joy, and you don't have to give an excuse. You don't have to tell someone all the reasons why. You just literally can say, I'm really, I super appreciate the invite. I'm not able to attend. I understand that I RSVP'd before. I apologize, but I need to retract my reservation, whatever. Like, that's it. That's all you have to say. You don't have to, and even if they ask you for something, you don't have to tell them anything, or just fucking make something up. Sorry, something else came up. That's it. That's all you gotta say. Okay. And then the last thing about giving ourselves support is reducing your intake to only the positive influences. So, for example, you're on Instagram. You follow a whole bunch of accounts. You like to be informed. So maybe you're following political accounts and you're following, I don't know, like some social reform accounts, whatever it is. When you're already struggling and your emotions are very low, you do not have the strength in your filters to be able to take in information like that without it like almost 10x impacting you versus like when you have your resources in place, right? Like when you're feeling good, when you're feeling neutral, when all of your energy and everything is like in place. Now for me, I'm just like 1,000% of no, thank you. I don't need all those dark things, period, full stop. But I do know that there are lots of people in the world who like to be involved in those things. News organizations, huge. When you are struggling, please, for the love of all things holy, don't watch the news. Don't listen to the news. Don't fucking read the news. You have enough that you are dealing with that you don't need to add on a whole pile of shit. Okay? Now, for those of you who've listened to this podcast for a while, you'll know that I don't have a very high opinion of the news in general. I'm not going to go any further into that. But when you are really struggling, eliminate all of those, even if you only eliminate them for a little, like a period of time. So I did this program, I think it was probably about 18 months ago. It was like a reset program. And it was, I think it was like, I forget, I want to say like 10 steps or something to do. And one of the steps was literally to like disconnect from anything and everything that was like low vibe. So stop watching the news for like 10 days, I think was the challenge. Unfollow or mute any, call it negative accounts. And I want to be clear that like negative in this way doesn't have to be things that are just about like crime, right? That's one way of thinking about negative. But like, let's say, for example, you have someone on your Instagram, on your Facebook, on your TikTok, whatever, that every time you see their stuff, and maybe they're just like sharing like, look, I just bought a house. Look, I just went on this vacation. But every time you see their stuff, it leaves you feeling less than. Well, that is a negative influence in your life. You don't need any more of that shit. So unsubscribe, unfollow, whatever it is that you need to do. Hell, just like don't even log into the socials for, a week or 10 days or however long you want to, like, you need to have that support for yourself. However, double tap, dive into, swipe right. I don't know, is right the good one? I'm using language for tools that I've never used. Really index into positive influences. So this is where I use things like Instagram or TikTok. I'm not as familiar with the TikToks, so I don't use it as much, whereas Instagram I've practiced more with. So I know, for example, I know there's a couple of accounts that I know no matter what, I can go to their content And I will learn something. I will feel supported in some way. I will have some kind of insight. But I always leave feeling probably at least not worse than when I started. Maybe not better, but not worse than when I started, right? And very often I've actually like interacted with the content and I've found that I feel really seen through the content. So those are great things to keep tapping into because that's a positive influence in my life. I am very clear, exceedingly clear, about the kinds of topics that I am willing to have conversations about in general with everybody in my life. If you want to, if I'm not adverse to talking politics, it's not my favorite. I'm going to be totally honest with you. But I'm very clear if you want to talk politics while I'm around, it needs to be constructive. You can't just sit here and talk about how everything is going to hell. If you want to talk about the healthcare system, this is another popular one, which is amazing to me when I think I'm like, okay, our healthcare system isn't perfect and doesn't need improvements. Sure, but it's pretty fucking good, right? And people will talk about how bad the healthcare system is. And I'm like, please don't put that shit in my life. Thank you very much. If that's the kind of reality you want to create, fucking go on with yourself, but keep that shit out of my life. So I shut down those conversations pretty quick. And this is just kind of in general for things. And I will also say that I have been learning and really loving stepping into the space of promoting joyful conversations. So a great example is my husband and I are like, we love watching all the Starship stuff, all the SpaceX things. Every Saturday we watch like this like video that talks about here's all the latest things that happened in the space industry, different rocket launches from like not just SpaceX, but like different companies across the world, different things that are happening, stuff that's like going out into the cosmos, which is just fun. It's interesting. We enjoy watching it. So we'll share that. That will come up. Now, Dave knows way more about it. He remembers all the technical stuff. His brain just works like that. It always fascinates me. Mine doesn't because it's just not the kind of stuff that stays in my brain. But when we have conversations with other people talking about it, it always amazes me because SpaceX is, of course, led by Elon Musk. And that is a person who exists on the planet that everybody has an opinion about. And they are very polarizing opinions. It always amazes me. And the number of people who will like completely dismiss what, for example, SpaceX is doing because they dislike Elon Musk amazes me. And what I've started really practicing doing and I'm quite enjoying doing is holding people in our conversational circles to task of saying, listen, we just spent 20 minutes talking about politics or healthcare or whatever it was that you were like, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. I want to talk about this. If you don't want to participate in this conversation, that's cool. You can leave. But like, I'm not here to just listen to dark, depressing conversation. Okay. I want to have conversation about stuff that's good, stuff that's happening, stuff that's like developing in the world. You want to have intellectual discourse, 1,000% here for it. But if you're just going to be like, I fucking hate that guy, well, then like maybe this conversation isn't for you. And I will say it's been very powerful. Now I understand that power is coming at a time and a place in my life where I have access to that resource. When you're really struggling in depression, in anxiety, in the void, in the gap, in the whatever you want to call it, right? You're in that dark place. You probably don't have that internal power to draw on because you're just trying to get through it. My point is saying to shift your conversations into ones that are more positively focused. Yes, 100%. Sometimes we just need to vent. Sometimes we want to share. Sometimes we just need to connect with somebody. That's okay. But if you find yourself, and especially if you find yourself in this like spiraling conversation over and over and over and over, like let's say, for example, a relationship fell apart and all of your conversations with other people are talking about, woe is you, this relationship fell apart. There's a point at which you need to just kind of own up that and go, okay, I'm not going to keep talking about this. It's not increasing my vibe in any way, shape, or form. And remembering that our words are super powerful, it's actually creating more of that like, ugh, kind of space, right? So all of this to just come back to the point where step 3 is to allow yourself to receive support from others and from yourself. Okay, I'm going to wrap the episode there. What I do want to add in is 2 things. First of all, if you follow me on the gram, you may have noticed this already. I shared this on my stories last week. I have this limited series called 7 Messages from Source. So I sat down, I had an intuitive nudge to write an email sequence, like titles come to me very quickly. So it's like 7 Messages from Source or 7 Days of Messages from Source. I forget exactly how the title precisely came through. So I sat down with my laptop one day and I just kind of said, okay, I'm here, but I sense that you want to say something through me. So here I am, let it flow through. And what came through, I mean, oh my goodness, like even I could never have come up with this ahead of time. I couldn't have told you when I first sat down what was going to come through. So the 7 Messages from Source are 7 days of emails. You can sign up for it by going to amyvanmeel.com/7. That's it. That's all the URL is. And you'll see a place to pop in your email address and you'll start getting those emails immediately. So that's a really great, especially if you're feeling dark, it's a great resource. Just a reminder that source is always, and I use the word source, but we can think of universe, God, Allah, kind of whatever makes sense for you. It's really good to remind ourselves that we're always connected in, okay? So again, those 7 Messages from Source is an email series. You can get that by going to amyvanmeel.com/7. The other thing is, I have been busy in the back end getting this set up, and I've had a number of different options of how this is going to look. However, I am officially opening up to bring in one-on-one coaching clients. So reasons that you may want to work with me as a coach. So I have experience in lots of different industries. I've coached people professionally, like through my work, for a number of years, lots of different nationalities. So very open to that. Moreover, my focus as a coach is to come alongside you and walk on your journey with you, like wherever you're going. So a really great reason that you might want to hire a coach. I mean, this episode is full of them, right? You're struggling with something, you're really in the gap. If you're in a very dark, depressive state, that's not the kind of coach I am, okay? I highly recommend that you work with a therapist or a trauma-informed coach to help you go through those spaces. Now, that's thankfully not a lot of us have that, right? But if you are in that really, really deep gap, you're really feeling the struggle of depression, definitely work with someone who is skilled in the way that you need to support you through that. Outside of that, pretty much all the rest of the scenarios apply that I can work you with. So I've worked with folks who are wanting to go after a promotion and they're not quite sure, or they want some support. Super great at helping you work through that. I've worked through folks or with folks who are working on confidence. This is one of my favorite things, actually. It's often women who come to me asking for help and insight when it comes to building confidence. So I'll work with you through that. In terms of like when I've hired coaches in the past, like I said, I definitely have talked about hiring a coach when I was really in the darks, but I also have hired coaches when I am going after a big goal, when I'm preparing for a massive transition. So I worked with a coach for, I think it was about 10 months, from like just before my 40th birthday through my birthday, through getting married, through transitioning out of my job full-time into my business, through the first several months of my business. And having a coach alongside me during that transition was really, really powerful. So those transitive moments in life, 100% here to help support you on that. What you can expect from working with me as a coach is that, you're going to get very similar to who I am on the podcast, because I'm the same person in all the places. You'll get my honesty, my integrity. one thing that I will say is that, like, someone actually described this to me really well a few years ago. That said a coach, sort of by definition, is someone who asks you questions to get you to draw the answers out from inside yourself, which is great and really valuable. And the answers really are within you, but sometimes you're like, I don't fucking know, and I can't seem to see my way out of this. So that's when I learned that a mentor is someone who is like a coach, asks the questions and stuff, but also will share their own experiences, their own thoughts, their own insights to help shift perspectives, to help open up new doorways, those kinds of things. So I think of myself as more like a mentor slash coach instead of just your strict like coach person, if that helps, because I am going to do everything and use all of the tools that are in my current possession and help you shift, uncover answers, find the resources you're looking for, all the things. But I also know how to recognize when someone is just fucking stuck and can't see it. So that's when I will leverage this whole other realm of tools and skills and abilities that I have that's unique to me, to be able to help you move out of that. Because the last thing I want is to see you just like leave feeling stuck. I know what that feels like. I've been in those places at times working with some coaches in the past, and it's always been really frustrating and super disheartening. For now, what I'm going to say, if you're interested, because I haven't got the URL fully set up yet, is if you're interested in working with me one-on-one as your coach, head on over to amyvanmeel.com. It's the main page. It's going to have all the offerings on there. So you're going to see a ton, right? Because like the freebies and everything are listed on there as well. But just look for working with me one-on-one, and the URL will be updated there shortly, probably by the time this episode is posted, but not at the time that I'm currently recording this. So, I just wanted to share those two things with you, and that's all. I hope that you found this episode really helpful. Please share this with somebody if you know someone who is struggling or who maybe just seems even a little bit disconnected, because you never know what is going to help and create some unlocks and some aha moments for folks. For me, like I said, it was hearing about someone who died and realizing that I was jealous of that person before I finally realized that like I was going very, very much the wrong way and I needed some help getting out of this. So we never know what can cause that shift in people. So with that said, thank you so much for listening, and I am excited to see you here next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you loved what you heard today, be sure to share it with me by leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform and help me reach more like-minded people who are ready to expand their life. If you haven't yet followed me on social media, find me on Instagram for extra love and inspiration by following @AmyVanMeel or visit my website at amyvanmeel.com. I love you so much, babe, and I am damn proud of you. I am already excited to connect in the next episode. And in the meantime, believe in yourself with the confidence of a 5-year-old.